Yeah, so my name's Andrew Lucas-Walsh, and I'm going to be talking about living through uncertain times. I want to say thank you to Arturo and the rest of the organizers for inviting me in to speak. Really appreciate it. And for everyone that's called in, I hope everyone's doing well and that you're safe and healthy. So a little bit about myself. I'm a product designer at Netflix. I've been in LA for the past 2 years. I moved here when I joined the company, and I work on the studio side of the business. So we essentially have a growing product design and engineering team that's focused on solving problems in the studio space. So in the same way that Netflix was able to innovate in terms of streaming content, we now want to innovate in the creation of content too. Before that, I was living in San Francisco. I worked for Facebook for around 4 years, worked on a few different teams there, and also managed a couple of design teams too. And originally from the UK, this is where I grew up, went to university and started my career. And I was thinking about that period when planning this talk. I graduated in 2008 when there was another crisis unraveling. And I was thinking back to see if there was any learnings from that period that I could bring forward to present in this talk as something that's maybe useful. But the reality is that what's happening today with the unique mix of an economic downturn and a global pandemic is just unique. Everyone's experience of it is unique and different too. So it really didn't feel right to bring something from then to now. So this is going to be based on some of my own experience and observations of the past few weeks. And I'm going to be talking about ways you can help your community, ways you can help the design community, and then a little bit about how you can help yourself as well. So starting off with ways you can help your community. Recently, the UK government was talking about how coronavirus was going to be the great leveler, how no matter whether you're rich or poor, the experience of this pandemic is going to be the same to everyone. But that's completely insane and totally false. There are so many different factors that go into people's experience of today through financial instability, your access to work and healthcare, and even things like racism. Been reading about how for people of color, they're afraid to wear homemade masks because of their experience with law enforcement, and even the sharp rise in xenophobia towards Asian and Asian American people in this country. It really just makes it clear that there are so many different factors into what a person's experience of this pandemic is. Thinking about within the design community, what that means for our experience of this from a work point of view, many of us are very lucky to still have jobs and be able to fairly easily switch to remote if we weren't already working that way. We have the technology to be able to do it in design tools and things like Zoom, and even things like grocery deliveries where people can literally bring us all the supplies we need to our door, which enable us to stay more safe than other people are able to in their situations. Whether people are working in hospitals or they're working in grocery stores, they're just putting themselves at much greater risk and they don't have a choice otherwise. So if you are in a position of privilege and you have the capacity to, how can you help? So you can start, there's helping people keep local businesses running. There's a few different ways that that have sprung up that I've seen recently, from Venmo accounts for tipping restaurant and bar staff that are no longer able to work, local restaurant produce boxes, gift vouchers for restaurants that you'll be able to redeem once this is all over, and even being able to order direct from farms to keep that supply chain going as food is being stocked up and piled up on these farms as they're not able to sell to restaurants anymore. And then even those things that you might go onto Amazon or other parts of the internet to buy certain goods, if you're able to buy those from small local businesses and they're still able to deliver, it's a great way of keeping the things in your area running. And The Infatuation put out this really great map, which maps out different LA restaurants that have switched and pivoted to doing grocery and produce boxes. So if you're looking to find out more about those, this is a great resource and place to start. In terms of low-income households and healthcare workers, it's two groups that are at risk right now. If you think about all of the kids that are currently out of school, that were relying a lot on those lunches in school and meals in school, you now have families that are struggling in a situation like this, especially when people are out of work. So supporting your local food banks is a great way to give back. Food banks are good because there's a number of different ways that you can give back. If you are healthy, you're able to give your literal time by going to help them out. You're also able to give in cash or donations of food. And then on the healthcare workers side of things, one of the main risks at the moment is just having access to the correct protective equipment, masks predominantly. And I came across this really awesome site just this week called maskmatch.com. They act as an intermediary where if for some reason you have like 20 masks in a box in a garage, you can send them into this website. And then through a series of requests from the healthcare side, they're able to distribute them out to people that need them. So just a really awesome initiative to be spun up and a way that you can help give back as well. So now let's talk about ways that you can help the design community. During this period, I've been thinking a lot about how challenging it must be if you're at the start of your career. You maybe just graduated, you're maybe looking for your first job, and the landscape of work is one where everyone is suddenly working remotely. There are mass layoffs everywhere. And so one of the main things that could be really impactful for early career designers is just having the support and guidance of people that have been in their careers for longer. I'm sure there's a ton of people on this call that have a lot that they could give to people that are very early on in their career. There's also really bad ways that you can give advice as well. This is a tweet from a very well-known design organization quoting a design educator who was telling his students to be prepared for interviewers to ask, what did you do during the pandemic? If your answer is that you played on your Xbox, or even just that you learned to code, you'll be viewed poorly. And I just think this is the most crazy and dangerous advice to be giving out. As someone that's done hundreds of interviews and has been a hiring manager, I would certainly never do this. And if you're experiencing this in interviews during or once this is all over, it's a pretty quick sign that you could be walking into a pretty sour culture. The reality is that this is not a vacation in any way. So many people right now are just trying to deal with the day-to-day realities of living in isolation, looking after young kids whilst also working full-time jobs, or even just being concerned about health issues. So if you think about what it is that you can actually control, we can't control the economy as individuals. We can do a certain amount to control the spread of this virus. What we can control is our interactions with the community in ways that we can give back and give support to people that need it. This is a great poster that I came across literally this morning from Chris Clark, who is actually someone I was at university with, which just captures this nicely. In the same way as supporting people that are early on in their careers, as we heard at the start of this meeting, a ton of people are out of work right now. Unfortunately, my feeds are filled up with individuals and whole companies that are doing mass layoffs. So if you have a network or a following, even a very small following, up to people that have a ton of followers, there's simple things that you can do when you see those. Just a simple retweet helps give more visibility to these people that are out looking for work. There's also great initiatives like this. This is a project called layoffs.fyi, where it is tracking companies that have had layoffs. It lists individual employees that have been laid off, and then also a list of companies that are still hiring. Unfortunately, this last list is much shorter than the others, but for this group, if you are looking for people or you're a hiring manager, come and take a look at this, share it. I think there's a lot of ways that people in this group could help out a ton of people on these lists. So finally, how can you help yourself? And I do not profess to be a self-help guru in any way. So this is purely based on my own experience of this situation. And, today I think we're living this weird dual reality where suddenly work and home life are all mashed into the four walls that you live in. Can be hard to have a divide between the two. And speaking personally, it's especially challenging for my wife and I, as she suffers from an autoimmune disease. So it makes everything more kind of scary and daunting at this time, where if we're receiving anything into the house, it has to be properly scrubbed and washed down, as any kind of transfer of disease could be really severe. We're not even really doing walks outside or any of that stuff. So everything is happening within these four walls. And yet at the same time, it's still easy to beat yourself up about being productive about work and everything that you have going on in your professional life, which is insane because, you know, right now we should be able to deprioritize those things and focus on what really matters. This tweet sums it up nicely. Because the reality is, you're not working from home, you're at home during a crisis trying to work, which Neil Webb said very eloquently. So the main takeaway for me in this section is you need to try and get comfortable with lowering your own expectations of yourself. It's very likely that in 20 years' time, once this is all over, the features that you're able to ship during this period or the progress that you made on a project aren't going to be the things that you remember. The things that you remember is whether you're able to be there and support your family and your loved ones. And I realized that being able to deprioritize work isn't everyone's choice, whether it's due to layoffs or things that are out of your control, like pressures being put on you at work. And so what I'd say to the founders, leaders, and managers that are on this call listening to this, the best thing you can do for your teams right now is to show care for your people and give them the space that they need to navigate the situation. And yeah, with that, thank you very much. And I did want to say, you know, I mentioned a lot about being able to reach out and support people and give people advice. And I want to extend that to anyone that's listening to this. Maybe you're out of work and you're preparing to interview, or you just want to chat. I'd be happy to help in any way. You can reach out to me, even if it's running through a portfolio or doing a mock interview, whatever it is, I'd be happy to help. Thanks very much.